Hello, I'm Alex Parkinson, director and co-writer on the film.
I am David Brooks, co-writer and producer. The glorious Dark Castle logo. There we have it.
Reworked for the film.
Yeah, very nice.
Nice thunderbolt there to bring us in.
Yeah.
What I really like about this is how the soundscape and the music all starts to build over these images. It's great.
Yeah.
And it completely blew my mind when we found out that fact about 20,000 miles of pipelines.
No, yeah. It had to be checked several times, didn't it, before we were eventually... Yeah. This footage from the doc is so effective in, I think, pulling the audience into the world here. We actually had a different opening to the film, which we shot and talk about later, where parts of that ended up. But it's just so effective. I think it speaks to one of the things that when you and I first started working on the script together that we came to, which is that it's just the real story is so compelling, wasn't it?
And this just sort of drops you into that world in a sort of an intriguing way where you're going to be wanting to know what's going on here. And this shot here particularly is the way it unfolds. I mean, this is the real footage, obviously, and just the way it builds and the way what it reveals at the end of it is astonishing. Not to give away the ending, but
Well, and this, if I remember correctly, was one of the things that really you said when you were going to make the doc, that this kind of, probably the wrong way to say it, but that sold you on what was possible once you saw
it's
the
absolutely
footage.
the right way of putting it. I think this footage sold the documentary because it's so chilling and so, yeah, it's just such a powerful thing. And every time I see it, I always still get a lump in my throat knowing what's going on in that moment. And it's really so powerful. Dunottar Castle in Scotland there.
This is one of the last things that we shot. This was about a month after we wrapped Principal. We went back to Scotland. We had done some initial photography very early on, before prep even, but then we went to do the aerials and this scene that's going to come up here. But these were beautifully shot, weren't they?
Stunning, yeah. And what's incredible about this is that those two dive support vessels you see on the horizon, that was utter luck they were there, because they weren't, when we recce'd it, there was nothing there, and we didn't even think there would be any there.
Yeah.
So that was a really nice bit of luck there. But it's just outside Montrose where lots of dive support vessels go in and out, so...
It's almost like we planned it.
Sorry, yeah, I'll go back on that. We planned that to happen. And when we got to the caravan, we spent a lot of time jacking it up, didn't we, to get it level again, because it sunk into the ground a bit.
Yeah, that's right, that's right.
Without me getting in the way of all this stuff.
Yeah, I'll probably have the whole place framed up by the time you're back.
Good. I want video updates, I want reports, I want to hear all that.
Yeah, you'll get them daily.
So, Bobby Rainsbury, she was an amazing find. I remember seeing her audition tape and being completely blown away about how she captured the essence of Morag really, really well. And you were equally blown away, weren't you?
Yeah, I think sometimes, particularly one of the scenes that we'll see later and talk about later that we use for the audition, is it's a scene that when we wrote and then started auditioning, you kind of started to think, oh, maybe this scene isn't as good as I think it is, you know? And maybe the dialogue's a little bit... And then there were a lot of actors who read for it and we just thought we're not getting there.
But that's the magic of when somebody does it right. It suddenly all works. It's like, wow.
Exactly.
Wow, we're okay at writing.
Exactly, yeah, exactly. We're not actually bad. This is going to be a bloody good scene. And yeah, she was amazing. And then, of course, Finn Cole.
Yeah, spectacular.
Finn, when we cast him, was it 3 weeks away from going on a dive trip? Because Finn grew up diving.
Yeah.
And he was going to Egypt, was it?
It's something like that, yeah. But his dad was a wreck diver. So he sort of grew up in that whole environment of diving.
Yeah, that was a cool kind of, well, you're going to have to cancel your one dive trip, but we're going to take you on maybe the coolest dive trip as an actor that you could go on.
So we're very lucky to be able to get access to this real dive support vessel here in Aberdeen Harbour, which is incredible because it allowed us to give us this whole scope and scale to what was going on with Chris Boarding.
Yeah, and speaking to the realism point, it doesn't get more real than this, and it just you really can't buy this kind of production value. And yeah, they were just incredibly gracious, weren't they? Really, everyone involved with the real company, and yeah.
I mean, this is into sets now in Malta, so it just seamlessly blends, which Grant did an amazing job on that.
Yeah, Grant Montgomery, our fantastic production designer.
Oh, morning, Craig.
Chris, I'm just going to find out about the job. I'll tell you later.
All right. Duncan,
Hello, handsome.
what you got for me?
Well, here we got a new captain.
Oh, yeah?
Woody with his pillow, which will appear several times.
Yes, how's the house coming? You finished my room?
Yeah, it's going good. I think we're going to paint it pink. Is that okay?
Or green, or purple, or... Pink is actually, that's a beautiful color. You know, a lot of people think it's feminine.
So just gem Woody improv here, if memory serves.
Yeah.
Shout out to Tanya, our wonderful editor.
Yeah, nice Grant. That. What I love about all the shots on the ship is all the real people, and a lot of people there were actually on the night when the incident happened. It sort of adds that layer of authenticity.
Right.
This is back to a set in Malta.
Deeper the better, I suppose.
So that is the real Dave's feet there. Or Easter egg there.
And Chris in the background, right? Or no, who's in the
Yeah,
background?
it's Duncan and Chris in the background as well, yeah.
Right.
The whole triumvirate.
Excellent.
And this guy here is Hugh. He helped out a lot on the dock, actually. He's a safety advisor. Really nice guy.
Yeah, he was a really lovely guy, wasn't he? We went out to sea, actually, when we shot some of the earlier footage.
Yeah.
I think it's about the coldest I've ever been in my life. Out in the North Sea in February, was it? When
It
we shot
was,
that,
yeah.
Which we didn't end up using, but a fun experience nevertheless.
That's the real Chris climbing in.
You all right, lads? How's it going?
Hi, Chris. Good to see you.
Oh, that's Connor.
On board.
Now, Connor was a real find as well, wasn't he? Because he was originally going to be an extra, and then we saw the tape he did, and between us we thought, well, yeah, we should give him a bigger role.
Right, he was going to have one line or something. I can't remember
Yeah.
exactly what the role was. And then, yeah, we were so impressed by him and really felt like we hadn't found the right person for the ROV
Yeah,
pilot
exactly,
role.
yeah,
Thought, well,
yeah.
let's have him read for it. And again,
That's the real Duncan there, walking by.
Okay.
oh, yeah, that's right.
You lot are going to be living in our glam
Half Bonner.
Tremendous.
the next 28 days where you'll be pressurized down.
Yeah, Duncan was very funny when he came to visit on set, actually, because he was so unbothered by the whole thing. He was getting really upset about having to do lots of takes for that shot, and he wanted to get in the pool and dive.
Right.
So he's going, come on, guys, are we going to get this or not? I've got to get in the pool and get my piss on.
Your hands can do whatever they want to. Okay, Team C.
It was very cool. Him and Woody together were, I mean, we had that great dinner, didn't we, with the two of them and a bunch of the team. And
Yeah.
you see how part of the trick, obviously, with casting is bringing people who can really capture the person's kind of energy and spirit. And you spend 5 minutes with Duncan and Woody together, and they're very much kind of,
Yeah, they're very similar.
yeah.
It was incredible when we cut that promo for Cannes, I think it was, and we cut together bits of a doc with the real Duncan with Woody.
Yeah.
And he was having to do a double take of going, hang on, is that Woody or is that the real Duncan?
Right. Yeah.
To really show they did capture each other.
See you in there. Yeah, see you in there. See you in there, Duncan.
Yeah, I see you made Chris
Here is Simu.
Yeah, superb.
Kid, anyway.
solid. He worked as a deckhand for 3 years.
Timu was always my first choice for Dave. So it's really, really great he did it.
Times with me, and as we both.
I think we knew that we wanted to get the audience into the action with a film like this as quickly as possible. So you've really got to be very, I think, careful in how you craft these early scenes to really introduce the characters in an effective way, because you're not going to spend hours and hours just getting
No.
to know them, right? So those early scenes, I think, have to be really,
Efficient, yeah.
yeah.
But it's a sort of two-handed. We're also introducing the world to the audience as well. It took a lot of crafting, both at the script stage, as you know, and in the edit as well, about introducing the world as well as the characters all seamlessly and smoothly. But it works really well.
And what was the process here, in terms of designing the sat chamber? Because obviously it's almost life size. I know you were very strategic, weren't you, about how you wanted this set design?
Well, I wanted it to be as similar to real size as possible because I wanted those camera angles to be forced into that certain ways of looking at it. So we weren't removing walls or anything like that. So the camera was in the space. And because of that, you instantly get a sense of the tightness of that space in this world they're about to get in there for a month, cheek by jowl like that. So it's all about the realism and forcing the camera into certain angles. Yeah, working with Nick Remy Matthews, the DP on this, it was really great about adding to those layers of closeness and tightness of the space. Then on top of that, we had the whole CCTV system rigged up inside. So there was 18 cameras in all in there to get these different angles of the CCTV.
And the CCTV plays such an important role really throughout the film. Was that always something that was kind of in the top of your mind of how effective those cameras could be?
Yeah, because it's about how to connect, like with Mark's character down to the saturation chamber, and having this visual connection both on screen and being able to jump into that was really important to keep the audience orientated. Otherwise, you'd have lots of bits of dialogue with Mark talking to them and not seeing them. And it's just a way of putting them in the same space.
Yeah.
But also from the real ship as well, they have CCTV as well. So I wanted to have that sense that these people, once they're into the sat chamber, they are watched 24 hours a day, sort of adding to that weird environment that these people inhabit.
Right. Well, and what was it that Craig, played by Mark Bonner, the dive supervisor, what was the way that he described that they're kind of his hands on the seabed, right? Or what was
his eyes and hands on the seabed, yeah. And he sort of sees them as being almost like, and he's not wrong in saying it, he sort of sees them as like his puppets down there because he's guiding them moment by moment about what to do, and he's coordinating the whole dive and technical aspects of it. So they have to do what he asks them to do so he can keep it running and keep it running smoothly. They're his eyes and hands down there, basically.
Right. Now, we've got to talk about these aerials, which were reshot in the same day, right?
Yes. Well, I originally went out with a helicopter to film them and did all these amazing aerials. And then as we were flying back to the airport, I asked the cameraman if I could watch back a few of them, see what they're like. And he queued it up and suddenly went, the last things you ever want to hear while filming, he just went, that hasn't been recorded to tape. So we had to fly back. We had to fly back to Aberdeen Airport anyway because we were running out of fuel. And so we landed and I had to call the captain up and go, you know that whole thing we did about you leaving port and going out to sea? Do you mind turning around and doing it all again, please? And he was remarkably gracious about the whole thing. And actually, the reality is that by the time we got to do it, it was golden hour and much better light because it's quite flat the first time. So yeah.
I just remember, I think I was back home in New York at this point, and I remember just waking up to all of the email chains that with Dan Clifton, shout out to Dan, bless him, getting the helicopter to agree to also to basically redo the whole thing. And yeah.
It was great, but it's one of those moments of utter panic, but also it actually turned out for the best, actually, which is one of those amazing things you get from time to time filming.
Here, we find ourselves at the bottom of the world. You are now able to operate at 300 feet below sea level, where it will be bloody cold. And remember, should you step outside the chamber prior to decompression, the gas now saturating every cell in your body will expand so rapidly, vital organs will quite literally expand.
He says that every time.
A bit of improv from here, from Woody as well.
How you feeling, Duncan?
So there was a whole debate we had, didn't we, about whether they should have the helium voices or not for this. And
yeah,
I mean, pretty rapidly, it's just going to be completely ridiculous, and you can't have any drama with a Donald Duck voice going on.
Right. And it was always the plan, and we had it as scripted, that he uses the voice modulator. Yeah. And it was probably one of the first things that came out of the cut, wasn't it? It was just kind of one of those, do we even want to go down this path and ask? I think better to just be clean with it and not.
Yeah. But it was good to have it and then take it out.
Yes, indeed.
Yeah. You work well on paper.
Wraps up. For God's sake, show some modesty. Cover yourself. Back in the day, though.
This was one of Simu's least favourite scenes because of him having to eat so much pineapple.
No, I think it was even worse. I think it was mashed spud that looked...
Oh, was it? Okay.
Yeah, or broccoli. It was broccoli or something, and then mashed spud, and yeah, he had to eat a lot this day. And I think we filmed this scene before we filmed the shirtless scene, so he was...
Yes. And this is great. So this is the first proper dialogue scene I've ever directed, was this scene as well.
Oh, that's right, yeah.
Yeah. So this is on day 2, I think it was, wasn't it? What an amazing triumvirate of actors to work with. I mean, they're all incredible actors.
And it was not the most comfortable in there, not just because of the tight quarters, but we were shooting in the summer in Malta. It was hot.
Yes, it was incredibly hot.
But they all just had such a great attitude. And I think they were so excited to get going as well. And this is, again, I think a really effective scene at just kind of setting the stakes emotionally.
It's that great bit about where Chris is realising he's going to be on his own, basically. Sort of that sort of maturation in a way, isn't it?
Yeah.
Have some free time. I'll take up golf.
I mean, it's hard to imagine the real people sort of spending a month in close quarters like that. It really got to be a very particular type of person to be able to do that, I think.
Well, again, I come back to when we were on the real ship and moving through those chambers. It was difficult for me to move through them, and no one can see me right now, but I'm not the tallest bloke on the planet, so I can only imagine. Of course, the real Chris as well is well over 6 feet, isn't he?
He is, yeah. And if you look, you can see lots of scars on his head as well. He sort of dings his head quite a lot, sort of on sharp edges in the chamber.
So this is our last sat together then.
Yeah, I can't believe it either.
Why don't you pull a Craig? Get in the hot seat. Call the shots. What?
No, I am not management material. And I don't think I could handle watching you guys have all the fun.
Yeah, fair enough.
Hey, look, you are a great diver. You don't need me around anymore.
I do love this bit of music here. It's really, really good.
Yeah.
So these are shots from the dock as well, aren't they? So this is stuff I shot when this was back in 2018, I think I shot this. But it really shows you what the weather's like and what the sea can get like.
Yeah, really, really effective again at just drawing us into the world.
The church holds 80 people and the village hall next door 150. So as long as we uninvite half my cousins, we should be fine. What else? Well, I'm looking really cute today.
Shot on a real iPhone, that footage. Period correct.
Period correct, yes it was, yeah. 2012 iPhone.
Yeah. Which was funny when we shot that, because basically you were directing it based off, she would just do it on the reel and then you'd kind of watch it back and then give her... Yeah.
The old days almost.
Yeah, no monitoring.
It's our first full CG shot, which is incredible.
Yeah, and the folks at Rise here in London did incredible work. Again, just so important for the scope of the film to be able to get those shots. And we knew that we didn't need a lot of them to be able to deliver on the promise, I suppose, of the scope of the film, but a few went a long way, didn't they?
No, absolutely, yeah. And also there were great punctuation points throughout the film as well to sort of chapterize it slightly. So it's really, yeah, I mean, those such stunning shots. And it was always the plan to, as much as possible, have sort of invisible CG, so it had to feel as real as possible. And talking about the ship at night, about how you could go that way of having a bit of blue so you can see the seascape completely. And
right.
I mean, that just didn't feel right. It felt immediately CG to my eye. It was interesting. One of our major touch points was always Deadliest Catch, wasn't it?
Right.
But with the ships in the storm there, it's a really definitely good touch point for us.
And Glenn Holbrook, who was our VFX supervisor, we were originally shooting the film in Australia, and he was one of the people who I was so just kind of impressed by that I said, let's see if he'll come over to Malta for that little bit and then be with us virtually, at least through much of post.
But it worked perfectly. It really did. Because you just don't really question that it's CG at all, which is exactly what we wanted. It's all about that sort of invisible CG.
Yeah.
I'm good, Duncan. Thank you.
All right. Thanks for pondering.
Oh, thank you, sir.
Team A entering wet pot for final dressing in. What about your tools? Just nice, compass your flares.
Yeah.
What about you, Dave? Need a hand? Didn't think so. All right, see you guys up.
Bit from the sea mover.
Right.
And we skipped over that first bridge scene, but there is much to talk about when we come back to the bridge here.
We're talking about the monitors, yeah? Or
Well, no, I was going to say the gimbal.
oh, the gimbal, of course.
Well, technically not a gimbal. Technically
It's a rocker.
a rocker,
Yeah.
as Danny Hargreaves, our
SFX
SFX supervisor, explained to us. But I think it's the biggest rocker that has ever been built. if I understand.
Allegedly. So that's what, 70 feet across and 30 feet wide.
Yeah, the entire bridge set was built on that rocker so that it could actually move to mimic a ship being out at sea.
Yeah. So it's 15 degrees either side it would go. So that's quite a tilt initially. And so the bell set as well, that was interesting how that was built as well, because that was on chains on motors, so it could be joggled about, which you'll see in a minute when they go into the water,
Right.
and also to be tilted as well. So that's quite cool about having their specially built little pool underneath the hatch, basically, so the divers could actually get into the water fully.
Yeah.
Lifting off that chamber now. And bell over moonpool. RV.
There's Cliff.
Yeah, Cliff Curtis, our captain.
I mean, it's crazy when you think about it, it's being dropped out of the bottom of a ship like that.
Yeah, it really is. I love, again, the detail here of just the little joystick that Craig has kind of taking us down.
Bell left surface at 2117.
That's a great shot, that. The sound on this bit's lovely as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, so you can really see that properly being joggled about by some of the crew there, so they're really feeling it being buffeted by the waters, as it were.
Nice little bit of character interplay there with our various looks. I mean, a number of those shots, like the one that we just saw where the bell settles in the water, those were shots that you and Tanya in editorial really kind of came up with some of those, weren't they? Just things that you realised.
Yeah, that was storyboarded before the film even was shot, obviously. Little point in doing it afterwards. That's always sits in the edit. That's always evolves and changes as you go. And it's great that that flexibility was there.
Wow, that is some swell. That's got to be 20-foot seas up there.
And this is great about giving the idea about the bell going up and down, because obviously it's attached to a ship. So in real life, it's going up and down by 5-6 meters sometimes, sort of mirroring the ship on top. That obviously becomes important later on in the story.
Well, and it's always good to try and communicate those kind of things visually to the audience instead of having to just exposition bomb everything.
Oh,
in
God, the
dialogue.
bell's going up and down a lot, isn't it?
Right, yeah.
It's 2 degrees above freezing down there. But I forgot how you like to suffer. Yeah, that's good. Coming in.
Yeah, so you can see the full effect of the pool underneath the bell set there with Timu getting in.
Yeah.
And connected. Lowering hat.
Hand on the hat.
Set the hat lower. Okay. It's all yours.
Good.
That's all.
We have our Drass helmets here, which was a bit of a journey in and of itself with John Garvin. We had initially gone down a path of creating a custom dive helmet, and semi-last minute, John said, you know what, I think we should look at these other helmets But what was your thinking with that process, Alex?
Well, I wanted to see the actors' faces, definitely, while we're underwater, and the helmets they actually had on at night, the real people, they have a sort of nose guard to them. It's just the way they're designed. You only see their eyes. And I really wanted to put our actors in the water and see it's our actors in the water and them acting. So that was a big deal for me that you saw their faces.
Yeah.
And it seemed like the right thing to do at the time to sort of commission our own helmet and get that made. And we spent many, many, many Zooms across the world. Like there's some people in New Zealand, Australia, America, all over the place coming together to make this, manufacture it. And the giraffe helmet was a backup for us, wasn't it? Which John suggested that we should have.
Yeah.
For whatever reason.
But I think ultimately you just really like the look of it.
I love the look of it. I think it's very unusual. It doesn't look sci-fi, which is good. I didn't want anything to look sci-fi. I wanted it to look industrial and heavyweight and of the world they're in, basically. I always kind of describe saturation diving, a lot of the aesthetic. Feels like 70s Soviet spacecrafts in a way. There's very, very chunky, very solid machinery, but it does the job. You're not too worried about design so much. You're worried about functionality.
Right.
I mean, although the giraffe helmets are beautiful, they had that element of that. I mean, look at that faceplate there. That's industry right there.
Absolutely.
I mean, that's amazing.
Well, I think what's great about it too is that it's that 3/4 of the face. So if the one we were designing was full sort of face, and actually you're like that little bit of not quite seeing from certain angles their full face actually plays into how kind of raw it is as well.
Yeah, and those are the real helmets. I mean, saturation divers do use them. So it's just a great option and it just works so well. And also both Finn and Seamu preferred them as well. And that's obviously a huge comfort factor for them, even though they're extremely heavy out of the water. Yeah, I think for them as well, they like that.
Are you good to go?
We'll see you in 6 hours.
Okay, stay safe, brother. Diver 2 in the water at 305 feet. Slow your breathing down.
We are now in our tank in Malta where all of the diving that you're going to see with the actors was done for real. They were underwater, 11 meters down.
Yep.
Which again, and if you want to speak to sort of, that was something from the start that was very important to you.
Yeah, I mean, really hugely important that it was the real actors doing the real dive work. We briefly talked about potentially doing dry for wet stuff, but very quickly I just thought, if we can do it for real, let's do it for real, because you just get that realism. I mean, it just puts you in that world straight away. And I think dry for wet is a really hard thing to pull off well. It can be done, but it's really, really hard. But where if you got actors who are game, and Seamu and Finn were more than game, they were exceptional at what they did underwater. I mean, it's incredible to think, as we mentioned earlier, Finn has had some experience of diving, quite a lot of experience, as he was about to go on holiday, but acted for us instead. But Seamu had only done a couple of recreational dives before.
Right.
And it's just astonishing to think that within a space of 2 weeks, essentially, wasn't it? He went from that to getting his paddy to then working with a full, proper saturation diving helmet with a feed to the surface. Astonishing what they both did, it really is. And then to act and do physical performance and stunts and all of this stuff, it's really hard work doing that.
Also, in 11 meters, you're not talking about just pop up to the surface whenever you feel like getting out. It's proper safety stops and start times, and it's all, you know.
Earlier on, we saw Brett in the.
That's right.
I was going to point him out, Brett. He was our saturation diver who was with us throughout the film to help with them. He was in charge of their air supply and in charge of their safety about stops and safety stops and all that. All of this stuff was shot in a tank in Malta, obviously, which was originally built for racing the Titanic, I think it was, in the late 70s.
Right.
But it's this huge saltwater tank. And we had to film at night, didn't we? We had to film through the night because the incident happened at night in pitch black. Yeah, so in terms of the divers, in terms of Seamu and Finn's endurance, I mean, they were underwater for 4 or 5 hours a night, through the night, and it's incredible what they managed to do. And it's really, I was very, very impressed with them.
And again, just this set looks pretty amazing, all things considered, that we were making this film for a price, but doesn't feel like anything was spared in terms of putting us in that world.
No, I mean, that manifold is pretty much life-size to the real one and feels completely believable. It's been there for decades, been aged up, all of that. It's really well. And also Ian Seabrook, bit of nominal determinism there, but Ian Seabrook, our underwater DP, he did a phenomenal job lighting that as well.
Yeah.
Because that was one of our problems with how to do all this, wasn't it? Because in reality, those aren't lit up in the real world, but being cinema and being film, you want to see what's going on, obviously. And
Right.
it was a great way of solving that problem.
And also adding another element of drama, I think, in the right way, where, again, we're trying to bring out the realism, but also make things as cinematic as possible.
Yeah, yeah.
On the script level, and then it really kind of, I think, plays out. And it's going to play out here in a few moments.
But if you're not from the world of saturation diving, you just would never know at all that they don't light it up, because you would think they would for some reason anyway. So in terms of artistic license, I think it's a good one, that one, definitely.
Cal, I've got a reading of over 1,000 PSI on Wellhead 3.
That's way too high.
All right, let me try and work my magic.
Cap, the thrustles have gone offline.
How many?
All of them.
I'm getting the same here, Cap.
Chris, the ship's
Moving, get out of there now.
What? Dave, can you repeat? The ship is moving. Get out of the manifold right now. Copy that.
Once things start to go south here, you don't want to let up at all. Right?
No.
From this point on, the riders just want to be as tense as possible.
It's great having these sort of different locations to cut between as well to sort of keep that energy going, because it just ramps up and up and up and up. And again, in the edit, this took a lot of fine-tuning to get it right, because so much is happening. You can't lose the audience to what's happening here, but it's still got to go at that pace and got to keep on going.
Right.
That was exciting doing that in the edit to keep that going. And Paul did a fantastic job. Paul Ledder Morgan, the composer, did a fantastic job of music here.
Yeah. Well, and Ben Baird and the whole sound team, really, the sound in the film, I think it always is, but an extraordinary sort of jump from just what we had in editorial to then the final film. I mean, it really brings it to life, and it helps so much to communicate those elements of the story and the different environments that you're in a very compelling way.
It was great to work with Ben, because Ben Baird, I worked with him on the documentary. He did the sound design on the documentary as well. And so it's great to have him come across and work on the feature as well, because we both had a passion about the sound in the documentary, and to bring that to the feature and make it bigger and more complex and more immersive was just a great journey to go on.
Yeah.
My umbilical snag!
You're in spinning us around.
Joseph there. Joseph Atlin, again, wonderful actor.
His audition tape was amazing.
Dive control. There's no umbilical left in the bell. That's everything I've got.
That's a great example there of when fins pulled around like that. You could never do that dry for wet, because it's all that motion, that movement, seeing all the material and everything, how that reacts in the water. You could never do that dry for wet.
That's why. Look, it's been pulled tight. Chris has become an anchor. That's not going to hold. It'll snap.
And again, really kind of selling here this connection between the up top and down below, and the fact that Chris here is literally the anchor. And his umbilical is holding the entire ship.
7,000 tons of it.
Correct.
I can't get to you.
I can't supply. I can't breathe.
And the whole idea about the CCTV here as well, about having the helmet cams and the ROV and all this stuff as well, it all comes to this point about where we break connection with Chris and we don't know what's happened with him. So as a sort of a theme throughout, it works really well doing that.
Yeah. I was so blown away. I mean, I remember when we were shooting this, just Simu's performance here. They're both obviously fantastic, but Simu was just incredible in this moment. It was truly chills from the first take.
And there's a great bit of sound coming up here.
Dive control. Diver 2 is on bailouts.
How much gas does he have left?
10 minutes.
What happens now?
Your umbilical. It's gonna snap. You'll get pulled off the structure. Now I will come back for you, but you have to do something for me, okay? You have to get yourself back to the...
It's just this matter of fact kind of, this is what it is. We're going to deal with it. You have to stay calm.
Oh, here we go.
Just make sure the more I go.
And that moment when it goes to complete silence, it's incredible. And seeing that in the cinema with an audience, you just really feel it because people just aren't expecting it to go completely dead like that.
Yeah, no, incredibly powerful.
But yeah, Simu throughout that scene is really, 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 really tremendous performance. And it was great about in the mix as well, about getting that sound perspective of being in the helmet with him and all those kind of things.
Right. Which was another thing that you had sort of planned from the start, that aspect of the soundscape, right?
Yeah, yeah. With Ben, yeah.
I love that shot, and that's such a great moment. Chris's severed umbilical going past Dave there, and Dave realizing that he's not on the end of it.
The matter-of-factness of that scene with Dave is really sort of speaks of the real Dave as well, about how that's the kind of person you want in those situations. You want to have somebody who's not getting wrapped up in the emotion of it, because you've got to do some extraordinary stuff here. If you've got any chance of saving them, you've got to not let your emotions get the better of you and just get on and do the job in hand. The real Dave would watch that and agree with that Simu's performance sort of encapsulates that. You've got to have that mindset to be able to do that.
Right.
No eyes or ears or divers or bell. Condition unknown. ROV feed is back online. Can you get closer? Davis made it back to the bell.
This is a great shot. I love him coming up here.
And this is great camera work from Ian here. And he's so amazing in the water.
I'm back on the stage.
I think what Ian's able to do in terms of camera work is really, he's almost like a human dolly, steady cam and crane, isn't he? He can really put the camera wherever he wants underwater. It's
it's extraordinary. It was great that we had him. Really, really great.
The umbilical snapped.
Scott.
This scene was made in the edit because I think something which became clear in the edit was we didn't understand where these people were, what happened to them. We set them up earlier, and then also we didn't understand why the bell was being kept down. So it's just a little bit of an edit to make us understand that.
Why don't we drop anchor? Stop us drifting any further.
This scene is great.
We don't have control of this ship. There are acres of oil pipeline down there. The anchor could snag any one of them and rupture it.
There's far more seabed than there is pipeline.
Again, this is just on the script level, trying to find ways to raise the stakes constantly and give things context.
Yeah, because this is something we discussed on set, wasn't it? Because it was originally going to be getting caught on an oil pipeline, wasn't it? And then...
That's right.
What was it? It was the clump weight or something like that was going to get caught, and then sort of came up with the idea about the anchor, because I think most people would assume you'd try and drop the anchor.
Yeah, it felt just like something that the audience can understand and, as I say, have the stakes be as clear as possible. Another beautiful shot here.
This always reminds me of The Thing, the end of The Thing, where it's all very red and flared.
Yeah.
It's great. This was another really elegant solution to how do you see... I mean, in reality, Chris didn't have a flare, but we could have saved a lot of money by having a pitch black scene for 2 minutes here, but...
Yeah, which would have been pretty uninteresting compared to, I think, where we ended up.
No, I mean, it looks spectacular. And Danny and his team, Danny Hargreaves, this is sort of a perfect blend between special effects and VFX, isn't it? Because Finn, in reality, is holding an LED wand there, basically.
Yeah.
And that was replaced by the VFX team with a flame.
I will say, I don't know if I've mentioned this to you before, but I think this was something that I kind of pitched to you on the script level, almost in an embarrassed, like, I'm going to throw out a terrible idea that you're going to hate. And you instantly were like, no, that's going to work great.
Yeah, no, and it does. It was a really inspired idea. In the documentary, I did it where it was sort of night vision and sort of that feel. And I think I took a touch point of that, of being a frame of reference from the end of The Silence of the Lambs, where you see that night vision look to it. And that worked really well in the documentary, but I think my mindset was a bit trapped in that. So your idea of that was really, really good.
Well, but I think one of the things that, again, from when we first started working on the script together, you had this obviously incredible wealth of knowledge about everything that was involved in this world, but there was also a lot of things that didn't even make it into the documentary.
Yeah.
And that was one of the things that we started sort of tapping into all of those things in your brain, and you would sort of throw something out, and I would say, my God, yeah, that's amazing. Yeah, let's keep going down that path. But within the bounds of obviously wanting it to feel real.
Yes, that was one of the great things about going from a documentary to this, is about being able to explore those things that couldn't go in the documentary. And there's a scene coming up later on, we can talk about that, which speaks to that. So it's great to be able to expand it out much more, basically.
Yeah.
Okay, but if we keep drifting, there's no way of telling how far we'll get from diver number 2.
My honor there.
Mm-hmm.
Again, wonderful actress.
And I can't do this without you. Listen up. Until the dynamic positioning is back online, the first officer and myself will take control of the ship manually and stop us from drifting any further. DPO, put her in manual.
Thrusters in manual.
Port, 140 degrees, about 30%.
Look at the light on the water there. It's really, really good on that from the CG.
Stand 40.
Now!
This whole sequence of taking manual control of the ship, I think, just really spoke to that. You know, what's a way that feels organic, but there's going to be a cinematic way to really keep those stakes high. This was, of course, a debate that was quickly solved, but the oxygen and whether we referred to the gas as oxygen, because, of course, in reality, they're breathing
heliox.
Heliox.
Yeah, so it's, well, it depends what depth you're at, but I think of this depth, 100 meters, it's about 98% helium, 2% oxygen.
Right. But gas running out is not as immediate and scary as oxygen, so...
No, I think that was absolutely the right way to go, because people know immediately, don't they? You can feel it.
Yeah.
This was a very elegant solution to the reality of what happened as well, because the reality of how Chris got to the top was he found a pressure pipe he'd been using to pressure test the oil wellhead and things like that, but that was really hard to explain that in a way of doing it. So this was a really elegant way of him finding a way up to the top.
Yeah, and this was something that we didn't find until well into prep. We were rewriting the scene, trying to figure out kind of the best way. And it wasn't really until, I think, starting to see the sets come together.
I think it was actually when we saw it built in the tank, wasn't it? It hadn't been filled up with water yet, but it was standing there, and I think walking around it was come up with then, and that gave Grant a bit of a half stack, but he pulled it out of the bag. It looks amazing.
Yeah.
But that was the great thing about everyone working on the film, because coming from a documentary background, I do like to evolve and change things as I go a bit, and everyone on the team was fantastic at reacting to that. I mean, I didn't change huge things all the time, but obviously when you get into a set, things change, and it's just great to be able to react to that, and everyone was fabulous at really dealing with that. This is really powerful, this scene.
Well, this coming up is the scene with Bobby and her audition scene that we're about to see be intercut here, which was...
Well, at the script level, these were two separate scenes, but then in the edit, we cross-cut them.
Well, that was something that you and Tanya had come up with. That was in from the first cut that I had
Yeah,
seen, and
yeah.
it was just really, really powerful.
Chris, I've gone down that rabbit hole again. Got myself into a right state. I know you say that you're always safe in your tin can.
I mean, Finn's performance here as well is superb.
It really is.
Once you step outside, it's like you're stealing every second.
The Easter egg of him clipping himself on there, which...
which becomes apparent later on.
Yeah.
It's extraordinary. But what we have is extraordinary too.
I mean, I must have seen this scene 100+ times and I'm still well up at it.
Yeah, it's really so powerful. I love this shot.
I'm sorry. I don't know what I'm saying. It's just... come home.
Bit of a tear forming there.
Please come home.
Yeah, just really powerful image.
Such great scale to it as well, like that. We had trouble with visibility in that tank, didn't we? So that was a lucky day we had good visibility in the tank.
That was an interesting shot. I remember even in the DI of kind of deciding how much did you actually want to see, because it was always really important for you. You wanted to see enough detail. Obviously,
yeah.
They are in pitch black, but you need to see enough detail to know that he is in the pitch black.
Yeah, I think that's the only shot where we have a sense of other lighting other than sort of practicals, which is, yeah, that's the one shot where I relinquish that.
But it's very seamless.
Yeah,
you don't, you don't feel it.
Stern, 40%.
That's a good shot.
Yeah, these were shots that actually were not designed to be CCTV, but again, something in the DI that we had fun with, didn't we?
Yeah.
Making them into an additional CCTV camera.
Well, I mean, we're so hooked into the whole CCTV thing at that point that people wouldn't question it at all, would they? So.
Right. Now, another thing that we didn't mention earlier, but that we're going to see more of in a second, is that we used a real ROV.
Yes, I was going to bring that up in a minute. There's a great bit of ROV work coming up.
Yeah.
Tim Bullman, who was the ROV pilot, Canadian guy, he flew over with his ROV in a rather large crate.
Yeah. The ROV, we should say, is the remotely operated vehicle?
Remote operated vehicle,
yeah.
So it's like an underwater drone, really, but it's sort of tethered to the ship as well. So it has an umbilical like the bell.
Every part is started up in sequence. It takes hours.
Well, you better find a workaround then, hadn't you? Starboard, 090 degrees at 30%.
30%.
There we go, that's it there.
Closing
Can anyone see anything?
So what's good here and interesting is that this is a mix of the stuff we shot in the tank with the ROV and then also the real footage from the night as well. And it's also so seamlessly put together, you just don't question it. You don't think about which is which, basically.
To mention as well that some of our ROV footage that we shot was corrupted.
Yes. Yes.
Which sort of led to, okay, how do we best communicate some of these crucial points? And I can't actually remember how it came together. And maybe it was always part of your plan to intercut some of the real footage, but we ended up using a lot of it.
Yeah, and I think it's really effective and it works. It's another thing like the helicopter thing. It's where what could have been in the moment thinking, God, this is not very good, but in reality, it actually turned out better. So this is the real footage here. And this is the kind of thing that is very, very hard to recreate. There's just something about it which is just completely haunting. And then knowing that it's the real footage as well.
And it's just so clearly raw, and trying to recreate that, I think that what we had got worked, but it just wasn't nearly as powerful, was it?
No. There's something about that whole thing, I think, about where if you know what you're trying to capture, you somehow always capture it in a way where you're being very filmic. I think it's human nature to do that. It's very hard to break out of that. But I think because the real ROV pilot wasn't filming it for any other reason for the black box and capturing what's going on for any subsequent investigation, then, as you say, it's got that rawness to it where it's completely unthinking. It's just capturing what's there, basically, and that's really hard to recreate. And I think an audience automatically picks up on that. It's very hard and indefinable thing to really pin down what it is, but you just know immediately what's real and what isn't.
Yeah, absolutely.
His eyes are closed. All 4 limbs appear intact. No sign of breathing. Involuntary spasms are from oxygen starvation to the brain.
So this is all real as well.
Where is he?
That's great. Great bit of Joseph here.
Bridge?
The other thing I was really keen to do throughout this whole bit from when the umbilical breaks onward was to keep it in real time. So it's pretty much exactly the same length as how long he was gone for. And so that's all adding to this idea about where instinctively the audience is going to be thinking, God, it's been a long time since he's been lost. I think that really adds to the tension, that's that knowledge that it's all in real time.
It also helps that we're equally OCD about certain things. So as soon as you told me that, by the way, the timing is exactly, you know, the timing of the countdown is exactly what it should be, I was like, oh, fantastic. That really satisfies my...
There's a lot of head scratching and a lot of maths to try and get the timings right, though, in the clock which come up. Since talking about the times here, if you look at the CCTV footage on the ROV, that's all completely accurate as well. But that took a lot of scribbling to work out the exact time to make that right.
And then bargaining with our wonderful CG team to get them all right.
Yes, I did get a bit obsessed about the screens, it must be said. But it's all worth it in the end. It's all there.
Indeed.
And I don't want anything I do to change that.
But these lads are my responsibility. I'm going to take the controls.
This is just, again, I mean, Mark is so brilliant. Well, Mark and Connor both in this scene. And this was one of those, this whole sequence, the ROV rescue, again, was something that didn't ultimately play in the doc, right? But it was something that you sort of brought up. And
yeah, it was something you was touched upon. I mean, this is what I would call a sort of slight extension of what happened, because what happened was that Craig, the real Craig, he felt so powerless and so unable to do anything that he really thought, and he spoke to the ROV pilot about the possibility of actually doing what we're seeing on camera now, because the ROV they had was only slightly bigger than what we've got there, and they can pick people up because of how water buoyancy works and stuff. And so he had a long discussion about the possibilities of actually doing this for real. So it feels part of that world because they genuinely discussed that as a possibility on the night, but as it turned out, they didn't do it in the end. But I thought it was just a really good way of expressing on the script level and in the film to express Craig's desire to do anything they possibly can to try and save him, basically.
Yeah. And to me, this was a really really fun scene to write with you. Just the build of it and how to kind of craft the tension here. And again, I think the use of the intercutting with the CCTV footage here is really effective, all of which was on the script level. I mean,
yeah.
You know,
but also it's all that setup about how it's sort of so important, as we talked about earlier, those sort of first few 10 minutes of the film about we're setting up CCTV. We understand that this is always going to be our visual connection to what's going on down below the water, and it just orientates you effortlessly after it's sort of bedded in.
Yeah. There was discussions about this as well, but the change in the aspect ratios here, you know, over like whether we kept it full frame or not. I won't say where but the point is, I think where we landed, where we actually are changing the aspect ratios, it
works. It works really well. Again, the eye immediately reads and understands what you're looking at, and you don't need any explanation for it, and you're in that world, basically.
Yeah. But then there are other moments where we do go full frame, and it also works. So it was very much we're like, we don't need to be super strict about this. We can work with what we think is best for the moments. Right?
Yeah, you can't be dogmatic about these things. I think it's good to have a framework to begin with, but then watching it dozens and dozens of times, you sort of feel where it's not quite working, how it can be expressive to mean something.
Got her. Pretty good. Raising level now. On.
This is a great shot. It's incredible how seamless all of these sort of the stuff we shot in the tank with the ROV and the real ROV, it's just completely seamless.
At that point, the ROV, I think, was that our stunt team basically manually picking up the ROV underwater. So we had an incredible team. Abby and her whole team.
Yeah.
Abby, our dive supervisor, who really responsible as well for the whole Malta team, and just great divers who were.
They were superb. Yeah, so, I mean, they're always pulling the umbilicals. They're keeping them tense. Their umbilical wrangling was the whole thing in itself.
Yeah.
That was another thing of luck as well, actually, about the umbilicals. If you remember, I wanted to have lights on the umbilicals.
Oh, that's right.
So you could actually see where the umbilicals are. And funnily enough, that's what happened with all umbilicals after the real incident. They then sort of made it a rule that umbilicals in the North Sea certainly had to have a reel of LEDs around them so you could see where they are all the time.
Right.
And I thought it'd be interesting to have that here, but thankfully the testing didn't go well and we didn't. I think it's better without, to be honest.
Yeah, I mean, that's why you need a long prep period as we had in this film, because there's so much detail and there's so many things to be worked out. And yeah, just as you say, like the umbilical wrangling, you realize, oh, wow, we're going to physically need people holding these things to make sure they're taut.
And not drifting into shot all the time.
Right.
Chris and I first met on a rescue dive off a lobster boat went down off the Scottish coast.
So this is the scene which was originally going to be the opening of the film, which was sort of going to be about Chris rescuing somebody in an air pocket in a sunken lobster trawler. But it just played much better as understanding how Chris and Duncan got to know each other, but also understanding about why he clipped himself on, which is in the previous scene.
Yeah, that's right. It was one of those things in the edit that I think we just realised we needed that touch point again with Duncan and Chris, to emotionally, but also just it had been a little bit of time since we had been with Dave and Duncan, and it was really effective at kind of bringing this scene to this point.
It was great scouring the island of Malta, trying to find a trawler we could use for the set as well.
Yeah.
Just the current must have carried it away. Eventually, it was decided that it wasn't worth the money to continue looking for just body. So they gave his wife a shoebox.
Yeah, I mean, this is a great pivotal point for Dave here about realising what's going on sort of emotionally.
Attached a box of useless shit, souvenirs.
I mean, I think Dave's arc is a really strong arc throughout the film, and this is a great moment within that, about when he's sort of starting to realise that you can't always be attached all the time.
You won't. We're not going to give up on him.
Good.
Yeah, great scene.
And Woody, of course, just delivering in spades, as he always does in that scene.
Yeah. So this was an interesting scene as well, wasn't it? Because this isn't what happened in reality. In reality, it was literally turning it off and on again. But we wanted to have that sort of physical manifestation of that and something doing something to sort of represent what Michael did in reality. And I think it's really, really effective at doing that because it's completely believable you could do that and rewire it.
One of our touch points right from the start, certainly one of my favourite films, and I think a favourite of yours as well, but Apollo 13. Apollo 13 is just, it's that wonderful sense of all the technology fails and how do you sort of invent the wheel.
Yeah.
And there's a couple of things in that film that kind of were touch points for this, but it was very...
Yeah, but it's that sort of ingenuity and human spirit of when everything is down, trying to work out a way around it. It's really good.
And specifically, I've just remembered, that great line from Apollo 13 is, how long does it take to power up the limb? And he says 3 hours by the checklist. And then Hanks goes, we don't have that much time.
Yeah.
It's kind of that moment. We played it earlier here, didn't we? He says it's going to take us...
hours, yeah.
They only do this in port. It's going to take hours to do, and he's got to find the workaround.
And that's based in the reality as well, is that a lot of people always ask in reality, why don't they do that straight away? But the thing is, it was always going to be the last resort because nobody had ever done that out of port before in reality.
Right.
And no one knew how long it would take to restart. So it was always the last option to do that. And they did it, and it worked.
Copy, dive control.
How you guys doing?
We're fine. What about Chris?
Foden is on top of the manifold.
He's unresponsive, but we are heading back as fast as we can.
Okay, speed up!
160 feet to manifold.
Gas is good.
Hey, I'm not losing 2 divers today.
Copy that.
You're good to go.
Again, just another, I think, really powerful moment there of,
understanding the weight of what he's doing there. I think the lighting inside the helmets is really good in this as well. I didn't want it to be that sort of spaceman astronaut feel, but you still have to illuminate the face. You've still got to see inside the helmet, which you wouldn't do without it.
But it's very organic. Feels like exactly the right kind of level. Which is not to say that it wasn't without its trials and tribulations. All of the problems that we haven't really talked too much about, but there were many technical challenges on this film. And certainly the lights inside the helmets and all of these things were... But it's interesting how I think they ended up not being completely consistent, particularly between the two helmets. But it worked.
Yeah. It all makes it feel industrial and part of it and real. That was one of the ideas of how the light around the ship on the full CG is. So they're not all consistent. They all have that feel that some have been changed out. They've got a slightly different light temperature and all that kind of stuff.
Right. I love that shot of Woody when he's looking up there, and we don't sort of... What is he looking up to? But obviously the people above here are looking on as well.
I got him.
Another very cool shot there.
Mel, I'm climbing back to you now.
Simu did this climb, 3 or 4 times?
Yeah.
With a stunt double below. I mean, that was real proper physical exertion.
It's heavy.
That's a great CG shot.
Shit, the water loss. Bell, brace for impact.
Again, this is an extension of what happened. I mean, the bell didn't hit the top of the manifold in reality, but they lowered it so close to the top of the manifold that if a big wave had come in, it would have hit the top of the manifold. So again, it's about to explore the idea about the risk they're taking, and the desperation. They're doing everything they can to get Chris back, basically, and they're taking risks.
Well, and yeah, exactly.
And calculated risks.
And again, I think just inserting a really effective piece of action there that helps tell the story in a very real way, but that obviously raises the stakes. And I remember from early on, we went back and forth on exactly how to do it, and it was always one of those moments that I felt, that's a trailer moment. That's a great moment.
I remember you saying several times about that's a trailer moment right there. And you're right. And there it is in the trailer.
It is in the trailer.
Dave, you're pushing too hard. Go with the swell. Climb when the bell's coming
And the
down.
music here throughout this whole end section of this sequence is just superb. The way it builds and builds and builds, and then the resolution to it.
Yeah. But also this was, again, an idea of yours that I loved of, how to sort of to keep Woody's character active in this moment. Because really, in the reality, there's not much that anyone but Dave could do in this moment. He just had to get him back. But this sort of wonderful thing of Woody coaching him through it, I think really connects them.
Yeah, it was great. It sort of unifies them as that team again, about Dave no longer being on his own. He's sort of part of a team now.
Yeah.
It's almost like that sort of mirroring about how Chris was under Duncan's wing, but now Dave is under Duncan's wing as well. And
right.
It's just a nice sort of coming together.
You can do this, buddy. One last push.
Some great screen replacements in that shot there, David. And the reflection of Cliff's glasses there.
Yeah.
Here it comes.
I mean, you can really feel Jimu's exertion here.
Yeah. And again, the sound, I mean, everything and the score just coming together to...
And the breathing. The breathing was a big thing, wasn't it? About getting that right, the rhythm right, the intensity of it, all of that stuff. And during the ADR record with Jimu, getting that breathing right, he was really, really good for that.
Right, and the mix, it was a whole kind of crafting of that sequence, wasn't it? Yeah.
Yeah.
Very detailed.
Which, funny enough, Ben Baird, the mixer, he then went on to do that with Conclave. He did a whole breathing track with Ray Fiennes' character. Which came first, though? I don't know.
It's all in the Focus family, so it's okay. Just a great shot.
That's an incredible shot.
You storyboarded, obviously, most of the film, but in particular, I think this was a sequence that was quite detailed, wasn't it?
Yeah, lots of the underwater work was storyboarded, all of the underwater work,
right?
Didn't they? Yeah. Because that was the stuff that needed to be absolutely planned and meticulously worked out, to state the obvious, but it really paid off to do that.
Yeah.
This bit of music is so good.
Yeah, that's good. I think within that, also Ian would come up with wonderful shots that we didn't ever expect, but it was a great mix, wasn't it, of that?
Well, it's just the way he could move through the water, which like you don't understand it until you see it,
right?
And it opens up a whole world of possibilities.
Yes. You're right. You're safe. You're in the bell.
This was an interesting piece here because it was very important to you that Finn had the right look on his face here in terms of
cyanosis. Yeah. You mean of having a bit of blue?
Blue, yeah.
To a lack of oxygen.
Yeah. Do you want to talk through a little bit, kind of how you?
Well, I mean, we started off, if you remember, on location. We actually put makeup on him, didn't we? And it looked very good, but on camera, it was a little bit too intense.
Yeah.
And then it's about, well, let's just step it back and give him a look and then work on it in CG afterwards. Well, it wasn't CG, actually. It was in the grade, wasn't it?
That's right. We were thinking that it was going to have to be CG. And then in the grade, it ended up being, a wonderful colorist
Adam, yeah.
Adam did an extraordinary job, basically rotoscoping around every piece of Woody's hand and everything and the rope.
You really get a sense of how he's just, well, dead essentially there.
Yeah. But also in reality, literally, he looked blue, right? Which almost would have been too much on film. The audience, I think, unless you've seen that in real life, you wouldn't believe it was real.
Yeah, I think that's what it would have felt like. Yeah, definitely. Because Duncan, the real Duncan, describes it. Chris looked like a Smurf when he took the helmet off, basically.
Right.
And that was definitely that moment about when we did the makeup of that. It was, although accurate, it just looked too far. That if you don't know that, as you say, this wouldn't look real.
Right.
Even though it is completely real. And then the great thing as well about doing all this and the rotoscoping and the DI afterwards is that then we could sort of gradually warm him up and get the colour coming back to his face in shot as well.
Right, exactly, to the timing that you wanted, yeah.
Yeah, which would have been really hard. Not impossible, but hard to do with practical makeup.
Is he breathing? Yeah, he is. So let's get you out of there.
Well, this connection's spotty. What's Chris's status?
Chris, he's breathing. Unresponsive.
Wonderful piece of acting there from Connor. But all of them here, I mean, you just so feel, I mean, I think this is just emotional.
Now with no oxygen to the brain.
I think this was maybe one of the first scenes that we really started working on the script level together, was this whole sequence, because it always struck me from when I first saw the documentary, and I thought the biggest challenge was always going to be, there's an incredible moment in the documentary where you realize that Chris is actually not dead, right?
Yeah.
And when I saw the doc, I always thought, well, that's not something we can replicate in this, because it all plays to how the narration has been working throughout the doc. And so it was this question of, well, how do we inject that same level of emotionality? And you got to find a way to, after this incredible effort to get him back, how do you just devastate the audience one more time to think,
And this is completely effective, because obviously they did think for a long time he had brain damage. And when I say a long time, I mean a couple of minutes, basically, of him starting to breathe again. But in reality, he started sort of making noises and sort of shouting and stuff like that. And it was to the level of where you're thinking, well, they were curiously thinking, well, has he got brain damage? Because naturally he would, obviously.
Right.
And then he started talking more coherently, and they knew that out of the woods in that respect. But that's not very cinematic for that to work. So this is a great solution to that, about that sort of catatonic look of, God, is he brain damaged or not?
Right. Because to some degree, I think the audience kind of knows he's probably getting back on the ship, right? Otherwise, this would be a really bad kind of dark film. But I think then you've still got to find a way to, now where are the stakes and how do we subvert expectations? I'm really proud of how this scene came together, both in terms of what we wrote, but then...
The performance is exceptional. I mean, this is probably the scene I was most worried about, in the sense of how to bring it together. But, I mean, again, such an incredible cast that once it clicked, it was just one of those things, you're looking at it on the monitor and you just go, thank you.
Yeah.
So well done.
It was one that was also, I think, really the crafting of this in the edit. I mean, Tanya, I think, again, did a wonderful job. It was not an easy one to craft, in terms of just really building the tension, but I think it came together.
And with sound design as well, it's really crucial to it, about how it all sort of falls away and leaves you in that moment of silence. You're thinking, all is lost.
Right.
You got him back.
We did. Dave. You okay?
And the great thing about Chris saying, Dave, are you all right? That happened in real life.
Yeah.
He really thought, he sort of came to and was wondering about why Dave was looking upset and thought something had happened to Dave.
Right.
Completely unaware that it's him that has happened to.
I think that's one of the interesting things to speaking with the real Chris. And to him, he always talks about how it's, in a way, it was not that hard of an experience for him. It was much harder on all the other people that thought they had lost him. He basically passed out and woke up and was okay.
The damsel in distress, he calls himself.
But
That's what I really wanted to communicate, though, as well, is about that idea and express that idea of where the helplessness of the people watching the monitors, of especially when the ROV refines him, they can do nothing about it. And that's why that scene with Craig trying to pick him up is so powerful, because the desperation and the helplessness of what their situation was.
Right.
What's happening?
Oh. We made out, but I'll tell you about that later.
Good gag there. Yeah.
I love this shot.
Great job.
I just love this whole sequence. The way it all ends, the music's great, everything.
Let's get him home.
I think the connection between all those characters on the bridge, it really comes through. And I think what Mark does, well, both of them in that scene, but it's just extraordinary.
Gives a wee fright there, Dunks.
I think I might have actually shit
A lot of that was improv as well. That was Mark just running with it.
Let me know, I'm bringing you up.
And then Woody's line here was a bit of fun that we had in the ADR, wasn't it? His response. Thought, might as well go for it.
But tied back to the original gag about, I hope you got your adult diapers on.
Exactly.
Not the real Woody there.
Sorry to wake you.
This was another lovely scene for sound design as well, about how you're very close in there and that sort of that world, but the Atmos sort of slowly fades away to just leave the clean voices.
Yeah.
So it's like really focusing in on what's being said, and it's really, really powerful, but really subtle at the same time.
I screwed up.
And this was a scene that really kind of was in the documentary, but between two different characters. In reality...
Yes, it was a guy called Stu. He was in one of the other saturation chambers.
Right.
It was scripted as that originally, wasn't it? But then it became a bit too many people and all that kind of stuff, and it felt much better to sort of tie up Dave's arc in this scene as well.
So and just, having this powerful emotional moment between them, these two characters that we really know and care about.
And that was quite late on, though, that decision was made, though, wasn't it?
Well, because I think it played into the isolation. That
exactly,
decompression, they can't leave, no one else can come in to help.
Yeah.
Pulse is strong.
Also, the bit of the end when he looks at the photo as well, which is coming up, that was a very last-minute decision to do that. Just before the shoot is becoming apparent, we had lots of endings, basically.
Right.
And it's just how to tie up Dave in a nice way within a scene, and this worked really well to do that.
Yeah.
And that's the great thing about working on a script with you, is we just went through and we works on it, and it was so tight by the end of it.
That prep period as well, I think it's just, we were constantly stress testing every single idea, weren't we? Of just, will this work on a practical level, on an emotional level, on a structural level, whatever it was.
Any number of levels.
Yeah.
Yes.
Peaceful. It's just like drifting off to sleep. It's really not that bad. Let's rest.
Yeah, this was bad.
Thank you.
Pick-up shot there.
And
then this is that moment you were talking about. This is great.
It's just a very elegant way to wrap him up. That's great.
Yeah, great performance there from Simu.
Morag Martin speaking.
That was your best headmistress voice.
So this is all based on the reality of Chris being unable to tell his fiancée what had happened, basically. And I think on the third phone call, in reality, she guessed and said it, which is what we come onto when they're actually together at the end scene. But it's just crazy we couldn't tell her. But there you go.
No, you don't have to do that.
Well, this is a scene that had sort of many iterations to it, didn't it? Well, maybe on the script level, but definitely editorially, this was something that got played around with a fair amount, and I think it's really good where it landed.
Yeah, it started out quite long to begin with, didn't it? And then it's just making it very, very efficient. And
just her performance here. You don't have to, when you have...
Go now shot there.
Yeah, great shot.
Wouldn't have got it otherwise.
Indeed. But I think with what Bobby did in that scene, it has all of that sense of, you don't need to say that she's onto something, that something's wrong, but she just knows, and she's communicating that in such a wonderful way.
Yeah, she was superb at that. And also, I think it's the placement of it we played around with quite a lot in the edit to make that leap to it. Good dismount from Simu there.
So the last thing we shot with Simu, appropriately. I also like, though, how, in a way, as you say, we wrap up his arc in that previous scene, and so it's deliberately sort of unceremonious.
Yeah.
We don't have a big final scene with Simu after that. It's like he leaves, and it's very much in keeping with the Dave character, isn't it?
So even after all this, you're still going to miss it?
This is wonderful, this thing.
Every damn day.
Why don't we speak to management about it? Get you back on rotation. Figure it out.
Good idea. Forgot my pillow.
There you go. Pillow.
Hey.
Duncan.
Love you, brother.
Love you too, Dunks.
Yeah. Hey, if you need a hand down the gangway.
Superb.
Yeah, and Nick just did such a beautiful job, didn't he? I mean, I love just all the texture in this image, and it's just beautifully, wonderfully raw. And
also the production design as well is fabulous in that run. I think Grant said there's over a mile of piping he put into the ceiling and around. So this bit here, this is a real find in the edit as well, because I just let the cameras roll, because Woody was only supposed to go to there, but it looked such a good frame.
Yeah.
I didn't call cut and just let it roll. And then in the edit, we actually found a really good use for that, about this is the made-up scene in the edit, basically.
Yeah, again, it was trying to figure out how do we resolve Woody's character. And this was, as you say, this was totally kind of constructed, wasn't it?
Which was Tanya's idea. It's a superb idea.
Yeah.
It really wraps up both of their stories really nicely. You get a really good sense of their relationship here, don't you? And we sort of start with that photo of them together.
Yeah.
And it sort of wraps it up really nicely.
Yeah, absolutely.
You okay?
Yeah, that was an accident.
There were two versions of this ending scene that we shot.
Oh, yeah. God. Just go show. I completely forgot about that. Yeah. Because one, wasn't there, where it was off the boat. So she met him at the port. So we filmed all of that there, didn't we? And
That's
then,
right.
Yeah, but this just felt much. So because the film starts here and ends there, just bookends it really nicely.
And it was also partly because during that phone call, we weren't sure, well, should he tell her on the phone call or should he not? And so ultimately, in the edit, we came to that it was much more compelling for him to not tell her and then let this scene play out here.
Yeah.
Also just visually. It's
the confirmation. She knows already, but it's a sort of confirmation, isn't it? They're both superb in this scene. Yes, because the scene in the port, we wouldn't have had the phone call, would we? So it's
That's
just,
right.
so it's splitting it instead, wasn't it?
Hey, come on. I was always going to come back to you.
I love you, Chris.
I love you too.
So this end song is Gabby Applin. Beautiful song, written especially for the film.
Yeah. Finn is just so superb here.
Mm.
Couldn't have had this last shot on the dock, and it's so compelling, I think.
Well, I just love it just going back out to sea, and that's what we subsequently find out he does, which is just a beautiful ending. And it's just such a lovely coastline as well. It's stunning.
Stars float upon the air, we breathe. It's okay to leave my side.
This text here that's going to come up, part of what we were talking about when we started to sort of do some test screenings, and got the sense that clearly the audience, they wanted something. They wanted some sense.
An explanation,
An explanation of what was happening. Even just to know that there was no explanation. I think with this kind of where we landed is that there's an estimation of what might have happened, but ultimately we don't know, and it plays into the mystery.
But I think that's really satisfying in the sense for the audience. It's up to the audience. We're not telling them what to think. It's that people are allowed to think what they want. It's like either there's a scientific reason or there's something else at play here. And I think that's really good. The audience just comes up to their own conclusions. The real wedding footage.
One person in the room in here is definitely going to hate this.
I just love this bit here as well. So funny.
Kiss on the lips.
I love how bright red he is. It's great.
That look there from Chris gets me every time.
That's fantastic, yeah. And this, of course, is exactly how the dock ends, and no reason to not. I mean, great storytelling.
Yeah, but
great.
it's
Like, why would we not?
Yeah, I mean, that's most people can't believe they're back.
Yeah.
Actually, literally finish the job they started.
So starboard 2 in the water at 91 meters.
So in terms of present day now, sitting here now, Chris is now a dive supervisor. So he's like Craig in the hot seat. Duncan has just retired and Dave is still diving.
Which, yeah, sounds about right. Fantastic.
Indeed.
And Duncan's son works on one of the ships.
Yeah, he does. Yeah. He works in life support.
Right.
So he works for mixing the gas and things like that.
For a blow and a pan ball.
My pal Robert Francis did this song for us here, which I think is a really lovely.
That's lovely, yeah.
Lovely track for the end.
Good on my own. When you take
There we have it, I suppose. That's the film.
Yeah, there's no Marvel bit at the end.
No. Obviously, it's nice to look through the credits here and just, obviously, it's always the case, but particularly on this film, there's just so many people, isn't it, that kind of come together to bring something like this to life. And it must be exciting for you, having been through, obviously, from the start of the doc, and then having a vision for how to turn it into a narrative film, and then achieving that vision, but all these people that kind of helped.
Yeah, well, I mean, everybody played their part. And as I was saying earlier about sort of the flexibility and things changing, and everyone brought their absolute best to it. And you can really see that in the film. It's really, really a privilege and an honour to have worked with these people.
Yeah.
And it's the other great thing of a lot of the people who'd seen the doc beforehand and not done it as homework to get the job or whatever. They'd actually watched it by chance.
Yeah.
And that added such an enormous sense of goodwill and wanting to do the job because they love the documentary and they love the story.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then Chris and Dave and Duncan coming out to location as well and people meeting them. I think certainly the dive team were more impressed meeting the real Dave than Woody and Seema and people like, which just goes to show what incredible people they are in real life.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, there's I think that having that connection to the real people and to the doc, and that, if you're going to bring a story like this to life in a narrative kind of feature context, then there's got to be a reason to do it, because the doc was so extraordinary in itself, and it did tell the story so beautifully. And so that's what's the challenge of how do we bring it to life and hopefully add something as well.
Yeah, no, I think it's a companion piece. It's not a remake. It sort of moves into a different territory, and it allows you to explore it a lot more emotionally, I think. So the emotional arc is much stronger in this, because obviously in the documentary it's a lot of talking heads, as the nature of a documentary, about where you're explaining what's going on, but this is much more immersive and experiential, and puts you in that world to feel it rather than understand it in the sort of documentary explaining level.
I think that's the key word, isn't it? It's experiential. I mean, that's what we always talked about, and just putting people in that space. And also, for me, what was always exciting is it's a world that people haven't seen on film before.
Yeah. And that's another great thing about it, but also intellectually about how you, as we were saying at the very beginning, how you immerse people in that world so they have a bit of an understanding about it, so they're not completely blind.
Yeah.
But you don't want to overload them with information and technical jargon. But I think it's done really effectively. Well, I have to say that whipped by.
It did.
Really whipped by.
Well, that was a lot of fun. That was a pleasure. Congratulations, mate. Watching it again, it's a wonderful film. You've done great jobs.
No, it's been a joy. Well, thanks for listening.
Yes, thank you, audience, whoever's listening. And bye for now.